My name is Everly Shaw. I am 34 years old, and I live just outside Charleston, South Carolina. Most people get flowers or a nice bottle of wine for their birthday. My sister Camille gave me a small box wrapped in gold ribbon. We were sitting in a candlelit steakhouse downtown, surrounded by cloth napkins and half-finished glasses of Cabernet. And for one embarrassing second, I actually believed she was trying to be kind. I was wrong. I peeled back the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside wasn't a bracelet or a watch. It was a plastic tube and a sterile swab, a home DNA kit. The table went quiet. Camille leaned in, her smile sharp as a blade caught in candlelight. Maybe this will finally explain why Dad never looked at you the way he looked at me. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips to hide a laugh. Camille didn't bother hiding hers. I sat there holding that little plastic tube, and something inside me went very still and very cold. This wasn't a joke. This was a weapon, and I had just been handed the barrel end. But before I tell you how the rest of that night unfolded, and trust me, it gets so much bigger than a birthday dinner, if you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your own family. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Everly Shaw. I'm 34 years old. And this is the night everything I thought I knew about my life came apart at the seams. The drive home was silent except for the hum of tires on wet asphalt. My hands were shaking on the wheel. Not from the cold, but from a feeling I hadn't let myself name in years. The little box sat on the passenger seat like a stone I couldn't put down. Camille didn't tell jokes. Camille told truths dressed up as cruelty so she could watch you flinch while pretending she was just being playful. Her words, the way he looked at me, didn't surprise me. They confirmed something I'd suspected my whole life and had never once said out loud. I had always felt like a guest in my own family. I grew up in a tidy brick colonial on a tree-lined street in Mount Pleasant. The kind of house neighbors admired from the sidewalk. My father, Walter, ran a mid-sized construction and materials company that had been in our family for 2 generations. My mother, Diane, chaired the garden committee and hosted the best 4th of July cookout on the block. From the outside, the Shaws looked like the family everyone wanted to be. Inside, there was a hierarchy as clear as furniture placement. Camille was the son, loud, magnetic, effortlessly adored. I was the shadow, expected to be useful and invisible in equal measure. I still remember my 7th birthday. I'd asked for a strawberry cake for weeks. When it finally arrived at the table, it was lemon. Chocolate's too rich for a little girl's stomach. My mother said, when I asked, "Don't be ungrateful." Everly, Camille, 2 years older, clapped her hands because lemon was her favorite. I ate every bite and smiled, because that's what I'd learned to do. That pattern became the blueprint for my whole childhood. Camille was wild, she snuck out. Wrecked her first car at 17. Racked up debts my parents quietly paid off. I went the opposite direction. I thought if I was perfect enough, quiet enough, useful enough, someone would finally notice me. I kept my grades up. I cooked dinner when Mom had migraines. I mowed the lawn when Dad's knees gave him trouble. I became the family's most reliable employee. When I was named valedictorian of my graduating class, I practiced my speech in the bathroom mirror for 2 weeks straight. On the morning of graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown to find my mother on the phone. Pale-faced, Camille had called from her boyfriend's place at the lake, claiming a migraine so bad she couldn't drive. "We have to go get her," my father said, already reaching for his keys. "But my speech is in 2 hours." I said. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. "Family comes first." "Everly," my mother said. Not looking up, they left. I drove myself. I gave my valedictorian speech about resilience to a gymnasium full of strangers, searching the bleachers the whole time for 2 faces that never showed up. When they finally got home that night, Camille was on the couch eating ice cream. Migraine miraculously cured. How was it? My mother asked, barely glancing over. Did you get the diploma? That was the day I stopped trying to win them over. I moved out the week after I turned 18. Worked 2 jobs through community college and then a state university. And taught myself how to budget, how to fix a leaking faucet, how to survive without a safety net, because I knew for certain that if I ever fell, no one in that house was coming to catch me. Camille never left my parents' orbit. She borrowed money for business ideas that folded within months. She moved back home twice. Everyone called it a loan. Everyone knew the money only ever moved in one direction. And yet I kept showing up Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, because some small, stubborn part of me kept hoping they'd wake up one day and see me. They never did. Then, 4 months ago, my father had a heart attack in his workshop and didn't wake up. At the funeral, I handled the caterers, the flowers, the guest list. Camille sat in the front row, sobbing into a handkerchief while people patted her shoulder and murmured about how close she'd been to him. I stood near the back, dry-eyed, mourning a relationship I'd never actually gotten to have. After the funeral, something in the house shifted sharper. Hungrier. With my father gone, whatever thin buffer had existed between Camille and the rest of us disappeared completely. I watched her at the wake, not swapping memories of Dad, but asking our family attorney pointed questions about the timeline for reading the will. I tried to mention it to my mother. She's grieving in her own way, she said, waving me off. Don't be jealous. Everly. It's an ugly look. Jealous. That word had been used to silence me my entire life. So I stayed quiet. Went home. And waited. Then came the birthday dinner invitation. Just us girls. Cammy had texted. A fresh start. I should have known better. In Camille's language, a fresh start usually meant times I need something from you. I went anyway, hoping grief had softened them. Instead, I got a DNA kit and a smirk across a white tablecloth. 3 months had passed since the funeral, and the silence from my family in that time had been deafening. No calls checking in. No shared meals. Nothing. So, when the invitation for my birthday finally came, it felt less like a celebration and more like a summons. I picked my mother up beforehand, since her car was in the shop. Walking through that house again, past the hallway gallery of photos, Camille's first steps. Cammy's prom. Camille's college graduation. And, tucked in a small frame in the corner, a single, serious-looking photo of me. I felt that old, familiar ache. I found them in the kitchen, flipping through a travel brochure for a Mediterranean cruise. My mother was in a bright coral blouse, freshly highlighted hair, looking better than she had in years. 90 days after burying her husband, and she looked like she was planning a vacation. Because she was. Have you heard anything from Mr. Whitfield? I asked in the car on the way to the restaurant. Meaning our family's estate attorney. About the will. The temperature in the car dropped 10 degrees. Why do you ask? My mother said, staring straight ahead. It's been months. I'd just like some closure. You'll get your closure, Camille said from the back seat, smiling into her phone. Don't worry about that. At the restaurant, Camille barely touched her food. She kept studying my face, tapping her manicured nails against the tablecloth in a slow, deliberate rhythm that grated on my nerves. You keep staring at me, I finally said. Just admiring you, she said. You've always been the strong one, the survivor. You're going to need that. What does that mean? Nothing. Just a compliment. My mother cleared her throat. Camille, give her the present. That's when the box came out. That's when she said the line about my father never looking at me the way he looked at her. And that's when I understood. Watching her watch me, that this wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was strategy. She wasn't trying to embarrass me. She was trying to disqualify me. Why tonight, I asked, my voice shaking slightly as I held the box. I thought you'd want to know the truth, she said, shrugging. I mean, look at us. I've got Dad's height. His eyes. You've got your own thing going on. Genetics are complicated. Camille, so prove me wrong, she said, sliding her wine glass toward her lips. Unless you're scared. I'm not scared. Eyelid. Good. Then take it. Send it in. Let's see who you really are. I put the box in my purse and finished the night in silence. When I dropped them off, I watched them walk up the porch steps arm in arm. A united front. And I understood I was the opposing team in a game I hadn't known we were playing. Driving home, my anger settled into something colder and clearer. Camille didn't do extra work for a simple insult. Buying a test. Wrapping it. Staging a dinner that took effort. That took planning. She wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was trying to prove something. And she needed me to be the one who proved it for her. That night, lying awake with the box on my nightstand, I realized I had to use it not to prove I belonged to them, but to find out exactly why they wanted so badly to prove I didn't. I called in sick to work the next morning. I couldn't stare at spreadsheets while my entire identity felt like it was hanging off a thread. I needed answers. And I knew I wouldn't get them from Camille or my mother. I knew my mother's Pilates class ran until 11 and Camille always slept in past noon. So I let myself into the house with my old key around 10. The silence pressed against my ears like something physical. I went straight to my father's study, his sanctuary. Still smelling faintly of cedar and old paper. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. A birth certificate. A diary. Something. I found my personnel file. So to speak, vaccination records. Report cards. A slim folder with almost nothing sentimental in it. Camille's file. By contrast, overflowed with photos. A lock of baby hair taped to an index card. A hospital bracelet. Mine held paper. No warmth. No memory. On the high closet shelf above my father's old safe sat stacks of dusty photo albums and shoeboxes. I pulled down one labeled with the year of my birth and dumped it onto the rug. Dozens of photographs of Camille as a toddler. Nothing of me until, near the bottom, a single faded Polaroid. It showed a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. And I knew instantly it was me because of the small crescent-shaped birthmark near my left ear. But the man holding the baby wasn't my father. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired. His tie loosened, looking down at the infant in his arms with an expression of pure, aching tenderness. My father had never once looked at me like that. I flipped the photo over. In my mother's shaky handwriting times, forgive me. I heard the front door open. I shoved the photo into my pocket and scrambled to shove the shoebox back onto the shelf just as heels clicked across the hardwood. What are you doing here? Camille demanded, holding a yoga mat and a green juice. Home early from her workout class. I left my scarf here last night. I lead, her eyes narrowed, flicking past me into the open study. You're snooping, looking for the will. Aren't you? I'm not. It won't do you any good. Everly, she said, stepping in front of me, using her height to loom. You're not one of us. You never were. Why do you hate me so much? I'm your sister. Are you? She leaned in. Are you really? I sidestepped her and walked out, the Polaroid burning a hole in my pocket. Don't forget to spit in the tube. She called after me. We need results by the end of the month. I drove until my hands stopped shaking, then pulled into a parking lot and stared at the photo again. My mother had had an affair. She'd gotten pregnant with me. My father, the man everyone believed was my biological father, had stayed and raised me anyway. punishing me quietly for it every day of my life, without ever saying why. I mailed the DNA kit that same afternoon. It wasn't a trap anymore. It was a map, and I intended to follow it wherever it led. The waiting nearly broke me. For 2 weeks, I went to work, bought groceries, cleaned my apartment, all while my mind churned in the background, searching online for any trace of a man with dark hair and a loosened tie from 3 decades ago. I kept the Polaroid taped to my bathroom mirror. Every morning, I asked it, "Who are you? Did you know about me?" Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, the results came in. My heart climbed into my throat as I clicked through the ethnicity charts to the match list. No Shaw relatives at all. Camille had been right about that much. But at the very top, under parent, child, 50% shared DNA, was a name, Nathaniel Cole. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something from a business page. I searched it. Nathaniel Cole, founder and chairman of Cole Harbor Holdings, philanthropist, notoriously private. I clicked on images, and there he was, older now, silver at the temples, but unmistakably the man in the Polaroid. I sat back in my chair, the office swimming around me. My biological father was one of the wealthiest men in the state. Digging further, I found an old business journal archive from the year I was born, times Shaw Construction saved from collapse by private investment. My father's company had been weeks from bankruptcy. A private investment group backed by Nathaniel Cole had injected $2.5 million into the company 2 weeks after I was born. The picture assembled itself, ugly piece by ugly piece. My mother had an affair. She got pregnant. My father found out. Furious. Ready to leave, except his business was failing, and he needed the money. A deal was struck. Nathaniel Cole saved the family fortune. In exchange, he stayed away, and my father agreed to raise me as his own to avoid a scandal. I wasn't just a disappointment in that house. I was a business transaction. Every vacation, every private lesson, every dollar of Camille's allowance had been paid for, indirectly, by my existence and by keeping quiet about it. My father had resented me for it every single day. I printed everything and called the sharpest estate attorney I could find. A woman named Renata Ferris with a reputation for not losing. "My name is Everly Shaw," I said when she picked up. "I need representation for a will reading, and I believe I have evidence of a blackmail scheme going back years." 2 days later, a text came in from Camille Times. "Well, now you know." 4 words. "No, are you okay?" "No, let's talk." Just cold confirmation, which meant she hadn't been waiting on my results at all. She already knew. I drove straight to my mother's house. I found her in the sunroom repotting an orchid. When I told her I knew about Nathaniel Cole, the color drained from her face instantly. "Camille knew," I said. "Didn't she?" "Yes," my mother whispered. "How long?" "Since she was 16. 16. Nearly 2 decades. I did the math and understood everything, why the house rules had softened for Camille right around then. Why the allowance jumped. Why every mess of hers got quietly cleaned up without question. She found a letter, my mother said, tears sliding down her face. "In my jewelry box. She said she'd tell your father. That he'd throw us all out if he knew." I paid her silence with everything I had. I let her do whatever she wanted. I was so scared. "Dad already knew," I said. "He made a deal with Nathaniel Cole. He agreed to raise me in exchange for the money that saved his company." My mother's face went from confusion to horror. "He never told me he knew. We never once spoke of it in 30 years. So you spent 2 decades terrified of a secret he already had," I said quietly. "And Camille blackmailed you for nothing." Footsteps sounded on the stairs, slow, deliberate clapping. Camille stood in the doorway in a silk robe. "Bravo. The detective solves the case." She looked bored. Not ashamed. You knew for 20 years, I said, stepping toward her. You watched me try so hard to earn something that was never going to be given to me. And you laughed. It was pathetic, she said, shrugging, watching you scrub floors for straight A's, trying to win a game you were disqualified from at birth. You blackmailed our mother. I leveraged an asset. She corrected. That's called business. Don't be jealous you didn't think of it first. And the DNA test. Why now? Because Dad's dead, she said simply, twisting the cap off a water bottle. The leverage doesn't work on Mom anymore. There's no husband left to threaten to tell. And I'm tired of sharing. Since you're not biologically a Shaw, you have no legal claim to the estate. I've already talked to lawyers. You get 0. You wanted proof. I said, I wanted you to see it in black and white. She said, smiling, I wanted you to understand exactly why you're going to get nothing at the reading. You should be thanking me. Honestly, I found your real father for you. Maybe he'll buy you a condo. I looked at my sister at the cruelty carved so casually into her pretty face, and for the first time in my life, I didn't envy her. I just saw someone hollow. Someone who had only ever understood leverage and never once understood love. You're right, I said quietly. I am going to the reading. And I am bringing the results. The law office of Whitfield and Marsh occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown. All leather and quiet money. I arrived 15 minutes early with Renata Ferris at my side, sharp-eyed, unsmiling. Exactly what I needed. Camille made an entrance in black. Sunglasses pushed up into her hair. Lawyering up. Everly cute. You're wasting your money. We'll see, Renata said calmly. Mr. Whitfield, my father's longtime attorney, began reading the will. My mother received the house and a monthly stipend, contingent on staying unmarried. Camille received $50,000. Cammie's face went white. Then read, That's a typo. You mean 500,000. 5 million. $50,000. Mr. Whitfield repeated evenly. That's impossible. She snapped. That wouldn't cover my credit card for the year. To Everly Shaw. Mr. Whitfield continued. I leave the remainder of the estate, including majority ownership of Shaw Construction, the investment portfolio, and all liquid assets, approximately 70% of the total estate. Camille shot up out of her chair. She's not even a Shaw. I have proof, a DNA test. She's not his daughter. The will says my children. She isn't his. Mr. Whitfield waited for her to stop, then adjusted his glasses. There is a personal addendum. Your father insisted on it. He read aloud, in my father's own words, that he had known since I was 2 years old that I wasn't his biological child, that he'd accepted the arrangement to save the company, but that over the years he had watched me build a life of quiet integrity while his biological daughter grew into someone who understood only greed. Blood does not make a successor. Character does. I choose her anyway. The room went silent. Camille's chair scraped back violently. This is insane. He was senile. I'm contesting this. I'll drag it through court for years. Before you threaten that, Mr. Whitfield said, his voice going quiet and dangerous. You should hear the rest. He slid a thick black folder across the table to her. Your father asked me to present this if you caused a scene. Inside were photographs of Camille meeting with an estate attorney 18 months earlier, discussing how to have a parent declared mentally incompetent. Bank statements showing over $50,000 in unauthorized withdrawals from our mother's account, funneled into designer boutiques, vacations, and gambling debts. And finally, an audio recording Camille's voice, crackling through a small speaker, saying she didn't care if our father died soon. that she had debts to pay, that she planned to put our mother in the cheapest care facility she could find and take everything. Adding, "Everly won't get a thing. I have a plan for her." My mother stared at her daughter like she was seeing a stranger. "You were going to put me in a home." I was venting. Camille stammered. "I didn't mean it." He heard this recording 3 months before he died. "Mr. Whitfield said. It gave him clarity. He explained the will's no contest clause challenge it. And Camille forfeited everything, including the $50,000, and opened herself to potential criminal charges for the withdrawals from our mother's account. Camille looked at me, wild-eyed, searching for the sister who used to just want a hug. "She didn't find her. You tried to erase me," I said quietly. "You tried to prove I didn't belong. All you actually did was show him exactly who you were." She signed the waiver with a shaking hand, grabbed her purse, and told me on her way out that I might have money now, but I'd always be alone. I let her have the last word. I didn't need it. A week later, I met with the executor of Nathaniel Cole's estate, a firm called Aldridge and Poe in the older part of downtown. I learned that Nathaniel had passed away 2 years earlier. I had found my biological father only to discover I was already too late to know him. An attorney named Mrs. Poe handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a leather journal and a heavy silver pocket watch. Nathaniel had set up a private trust for me years before, separate from his main estate. Because, as Mrs. Poe explained, he'd wanted to protect me from public scrutiny. Not because he was ashamed. The journal was addressed to me. He wrote that he was sorry he couldn't hold me when I cried or cheer for me at graduation. That he'd kept a promise to stay away because he believed it kept me safe. But that he had quietly followed my life for 34 years. My valedictorian speech, my degree, my career. "You were never a mistake to me," he wrote. "You were the one thing I got right, even if I never got to claim you. Don't let the world make you hard. You have a gentle heart. Protect it." I sat in that office and cried for the father I never got to know, and for the one who raised me but never let himself love me. 6 months later, I drove up a gravel road lined with turning maples to a small cottage with a wraparound porch, overlooking the Blue Ridge foothills. It was mine. I hadn't quit my job, but I'd cut my hours and used part of both inheritances to start a scholarship foundation for kids who'd aged out of foster care, kids who knew what it felt like to be the overlooked one in a room. My mother and I text once a week now. Short messages. Nothing forced. We're building something new. Slowly. Based on boundaries instead of obligation. As for Camille, I heard she moved out of state and took a job answering phones somewhere, working to pay down what she owed. I don't wish her harm. I mostly just don't think about her at all. I sat on my porch that evening with Nathaniel's watch ticking steadily on my wrist, listening to the wind move through the trees. For 34 years, I had been the invisible daughter, the shadow, the afterthought, the mistake. But sitting there in the quiet of a home that was truly mine, I understood the truth for the first time. I was never invisible. I was just waiting for the right light to find me. If this story moved you, or if it reminded you of your own family, tell me in the comments. And if you believe love should never be a competition, hit subscribe for the next one.